100 years ago, the forebearers of our church ignited the light of faith, one that still burns brightly today. This is St. John the Divine Greek Orthodox Church. Then and now, its parishioners have made it their mission to uphold a legacy of faith, family, and freedom for all. A humble beginning is how you'd describe St. John the Divine. It started in a home, converted to a church in 1916 in Jacksonville, Florida. After Tarpon Springs and Pensacola, it is the third oldest parish in the state. Father Michael Saris was its first permanent priest. The church was founded by Greek immigrants who arrived to the area at the turn of the 20th century. They worked hard, they were dedicated to their faith, and soon they purchased a larger facility in downtown Jacksonville.
Well, it was started off in 1933. As I understand it, I was the first one that was baptized in the church on the corner of Laurel and Union, uptown.
When we did the Easter services, now we come out from the church and we go around the church with the epitaphial. In those days, we couldn't go around the church, so we used to go down to Hemming Park, walk all the way, and that was like 3 or 4 blocks from the church.
I remember one elderly priest when I was a little girl. It's something how one remembers certain things. And I remember asking Mother, he would touch the children so kindly and gently. I said, Mother, is that God? He had a long white beard. You could feel the presence of God in him. I said, Mother, is that God? And it was just a blessing to be there.
They ought to take the individuals, go back into the 20s and the 30s, and that's including my family, and put their names on a wall. Because, I mean, depression times, I mean, all those hard times, and they managed to come up with a piece of property at Laurel Union, a church, and pay for it.
The beautiful church on a corner of downtown Jacksonville marked the sacramental milestones in the lives of its parishioners. It also became a hub of social activity, especially during wartime. Many young men from St. John the Divine served in the U.S. military, and one paid the ultimate sacrifice.
It was during World War II. And of course, there were a lot of people a lot of young men who were in the military, who were away from their homes, and everybody was very gracious. The Easter picnics were really something to see all the young men that were serving in the military at that time.
And we would clear all the chairs out and we'd have dances. It was during the war, and the girls club would invite all the servicemen to come, and we would have a party.
These old newspaper clippings show that the church served as a focal point for others in the Jacksonville community during World War II. Others who wanted to help Greeks in their homeland who were being battered by war.
They had Greek war relief. They had sponsored a big drive, sponsored, I think, by people who weren't Greek, and raised money for the Greeks during the German campaign and the Italian campaigns. So it was a wonderful time and a bad time.
Parishioners cared deeply about their church and found creative ways to show it. This one-of-a-kind, leather-bound book is a handwritten Bible, transcribed in Greek, meticulously put together by St. John the Divine parishioner Tom Christen. He worked hours a day for years to complete it. These ledgers from the early 1930s document the church's earliest members. And as those members added to their families, over the course of 39 years, the parish of St. John the Divine grew. That coupled with issues concerning the downtown church, prompted members to look for land to build a new church.
We didn't have air conditioning. We had these big windows that would open, and they had large fans in the back. So my vivid memories are Easter time with everyone holding candles and some loud fans in the back and people just standing there just perspiring.
I don't know if you're familiar with Laurel Street. It's a busy street, and the kids go to Sunday school and we were scared they're gonna get run over. They came out and looked all over. They found this property in Atlantic Boulevard, and they had a heck of a time getting it because a lot of people say, I live on this side of town, I live on that. But then we finally got a Sunday school and all. And now we need a bigger church.
Church leaders decided on a plot of land on Atlantic Boulevard and bought it in 1959.
When we purchased the lot, it was full of trash. The people, the neighbors were throwing everything, I think, because it was an empty lot, and it was full of trash, everything. We worked for weeks to clear this land, but we did.
Others worked for months and years, coming up with a design for the new church.
The first charge, they said we want the church to face east, like all Orthodox churches face east. Well, the axis of this property is north-south, and there's no way to turn it east. So we did start off with some plans that way, but it didn't work, so we ended up orienting it this way. And there were some people that still felt like the roof was going to cave in because we weren't facing east. There was one gentleman sat in the back, and he looked that way all the time, toward the east, which is that direction. We'd start off with domes. We couldn't afford the domes, a dome, because the dome cost $50,000 and our total budget was $220,000. So we gave up the dome and went to the barrel vaults, which is a very early Christian model, church model.
Once the design was chosen, 7 years after the property on Atlantic Boulevard was purchased, parishioners attended a groundbreaking ceremony in 1966. 2 years later, the church was built, and it was consecrated by Archbishop Yakovos in 1970.
I thought it was the prettiest church I ever saw, and it was big then.
The church also garnered awards for the parishioner who designed it, architect Ted Pappas. Despite the excitement, it was a bittersweet time for those who would miss the small church downtown.
People were sad, happy in a way, but sad, and you would see people wiping their eyes. And they wanted this iconostation. This was at the old church. And that was one of the things that everybody said, we want it brought to the new church. And it was incorporated here. That's very special. It was. We wanted it very badly. And we lived our lives in the church.
The old church was torn down by the owner of the new property. Some of its stained glass windows were kept, but the sign out front was lost forever. That is, until parishioner Mary Roman happened upon it years later at a flea market and purchased it for posterity. The first liturgy in the Atlantic Boulevard Church was held in 1968 with Father Frank Kierlingaitis officiating. On the outside, things were complete. On the inside, things were somewhat sparse. Bill Kakmus was parish council president at the time.
We had no carpeting, we had no pews, the floor was concrete, and in order to make it look a little better, we put a shiny finish on it. But we were just thrilled to be in the new church. And little by little, we all donated this or that or the other.
My sister-in-law and I, Anna Maurice, we were hospitality, and we had a lot of coffees and receptions for the opening of the church. And it seemed like for a couple of years, Anna and I just traveled with the tea services in the trunk of our car, you know, because we had just gotten into the church and nothing was really settled, so we would just carry it, you know, and bring it and set it up.
The pews were all donated. One Sunday, got up at a banquet and they said, we got the pews, and who wants one? One by one, somebody raised their hand, they bought the pews. And the rugs, same way. One Sunday, we had a luncheon. Father Frank said, we need rugs. I think it was $7,000 in. was donated.
Ever mindful of carrying debt on the church, its members worked diligently to pay off the mortgage. They were soon able to do so and held a celebration to burn the mortgage papers.
It was very, how do you say, it was a culmination of a lot of hard work, because up until that time, we would give all kinds of small events to raise money towards the mortgage. We, Philopticos, would bake sweets and go down and sell them in the front of what used to be City Hall down on Bay Street.
St. John the Divine finds itself growing once again. The church is often standing room only during service. Sunday school classrooms are overflowing with children. 100 years later, the light of faith that was lit by our forebearers is burning as strong as ever.
I would want people to know that we were a part of the very, very old history of Jacksonville. Jacksonville has a rich history. I think we were significant. The church and our customs, our activities were a significant part of Jacksonville.
Hundreds of weddings, baptisms, and yes, even funerals have taken place inside this well-loved church. But as it is written in Ecclesiastes, there is a time for everything.
St. John the Divine has always been a home for visionaries, and Stacy, you were able to illustrate that as we took a look back at the past 100 years. But as the Bible says, where there is no vision, the people will perish. That vision takes us to our new home on Beach Boulevard.
Alleluia, 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 glory to thee. Alleluia, 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 glory to thee.
A new beginning is just around the corner. And as we celebrate our 100 years, the cornerstone was laid. In 2010, His Eminence Metropolitan Alexios of Atlanta blessed the grounds. Our beloved St. John the Divine is entering into yet another new chapter.
And that looks like having a church that builds upon our past, builds upon the legacy of our past, but also takes our church to a whole new level, where we're building a church that impacts people not just on a Sunday morning divine liturgy or just on a Wednesday Bible study, but that every single day people have a place, a spiritual home that they can come to every day.
Save, O God, these your people.
Just like the priests before him, Father Nicholas Lowe has continued to build new ministries, ministering to the people within our four walls and beyond, and our family continues to grow.
We're walking around saying, I feel like I'm a new member. Half the people I don't know. So you walk up and you say, good morning, how are you?
I tell all my family and anyone how blessed I am to be a member of such a loving, kind, and compassionate church family. Very close, like you feel like they're your real family. They care.
And just like a family, this church family pulled together, prayed together, and offered back their blessings to begin building God's new home on Beach Boulevard, a basilica-style church large enough to meet the needs of our thriving community.
I hate to see this close, but I'm glad for future generations that we are going to have the new church. I think they're going to fill it up very quickly. I think that's an exciting thing to know, that our Orthodox faith has expanded and it's gone beyond just the Greeks and their children.
We're busting at the seams, there's no doubt about that. I think that that's a true testament, not only to the warmth of this community, also a true testament to our priest and our priests who do such a fantastic job of making people feel comfortable. But we are busting at the seams and we need a little bit more room. We're slowly outgrowing this building.
For 100 years, the faithful of St. John the Divine have often been among the first in the community to respond to our city's needs, always focused on doing God's work. Then and now, we continue to serve a world less fortunate, some hungry, some homeless, some lonely, all searching for light. Doing God's work is part of our legacy.
Whether it was through the feeding the hungry during the Great Depression, helping out the Greek Relief Fund, to our countless ministries that we're doing right now, I feel so blessed to be part of that.
A part of Jacksonville history, a part of God's calling, a part of His ministries that will continue to ignite within the hearts of those who worship with us and spread throughout our great city. Just as the book of Isaiah says, I am the Lord, I have called you in righteousness. I will hold you by the hand and watch over you, and I will appoint you as a covenant to the people, as a light to the nations.
There was a time when this church had to be created, and there was a time when the first church had to be created. And what's happening is that the torch of these predecessors is being slowly passed from one generation to a next. And it's time for this generation to take that torch and move forward in the same spirit.
You know what my dream is more than anything else is that we all grow in Christ. And if we are on fire for Christ, despite where we may be located at, it's going to drive us to want to bring people closer to our community.
Our 100-year journey that began in 1916 is to be celebrated. Today we stand on the shoulders of those who lit the torch, and we look into the eyes of the children who will carry on the legacy, building on a foundation that remains focused on Christ our King and our God.